helping brands maximize the value of their sponsorships and create more engaging experiences. This is the Market Share Sports Podcast.
Welcome to the Market Share Sports Podcast. My name is Jim Richards, and I look forward to introducing you to our agency over the next few months. We are really excited about the opportunities that are presenting themselves in the sports and entertainment marketplace, and we look forward to sharing our insights with you. Let's kick this off with an introduction. Who is Market Share Sports? Well, we are a client-first, full-service agency that leverages marketing partnerships to drive measurable business results for our clients. Your marketing partnerships and sponsorships should never be one-dimensional. They should impact every touch point of your business. They should impact distribution, velocity, and awareness of your brand. Brands hire us to make sure that happens. Our expertise is in four main areas: sports and entertainment sponsorships, experiential marketing, the college campus, and retail. We really enjoy impacting our clients' business through cultural engagement. We also enjoy building genuine relationships within the industry. Over the next few months, we hope to introduce you to some of our friends who we feel are the best and brightest in the sports and entertainment marketplace. We have some exciting opportunities that are on the way in 2018, and we look forward to announcing those at a future time as well. So let's get this podcast started. To start the year, we thought it'd be a good idea to do a marketing roundtable regarding the things that we're watching here at Market Share. I sat down with Valerie Tyson, our Director of Digital Strategy, and Jonell Walden, our Vice President of Experiences. I think you're going to enjoy the conversation. All right, guys, it's 2018. We're excited about a bunch of things going on here at Market Share Sports. New year, new opportunities. One of the things we're excited about is our podcast. And as we start the new year, I thought it'd be good just to do a roundtable with our leadership. Let's talk about 2018. What are you watching in 2018 that's of interest? Jonell, let's start with you.
I could start with something as sexy as VR or AR, which is going to be interesting and really interesting to see how it's integrated into a lot of experiential activations that then in turn affects sales. But I think we're going to deal with the boring task of
instead of having
devices.
Fun, we're going to get down to business.
It's important. Electronic logging devices. Electronic logging devices are essentially have been mandated beginning December 18th, 2017 by the Department of Transportation. Any commercial vehicle must have an electronic logging device. And why that's important is that you no longer have to depend on the driver to log their hours, log their breaks, log their work time, log their rest times. It's all going to be calculated automatically by this electronic logging device, which is connected to your vehicle. This is important because there are those instances where we as agencies like to squeeze every dollar out of our activations. And being able to have our drivers, drive, make a 13-hour drive in 14 hours, but log it as 13, as I know many are wont to do. That's no longer the case. These logging devices, there's no nuance. They're exact, and that exactness is going to affect the way we schedule our staff, the way we route our tours, and also the way we budget for our programs. So that is something that, looking at the plethora of marketing companies that come into the experiential space every year, this is something that not everyone has been briefed on, and how they respond to that will, you put not only your business in limbo by not adhering to these rules, you also put your client's name at risk, and they're going to be doing random audits on vehicles from now until about April, and beginning in April, if you aren't complying with the audits or they randomly choose you and you're not complying or you don't have the proper equipment, you can be parked for a 24-hour period, which can screw up an entire tour, activation, weekday, month, what have you. And as someone who's been parked at a DOT station in my younger days for 8 hours, that is not a pleasant feeling, especially back then. I didn't have a cell phone. So it was essentially just reading driver manuals, trying to pass the time.
Very interesting. I think it's going to the impact of that. You start thinking about that with the amount of time sports series are on the road, scheduling. We've had even this past year we had an incident where one of the guys we were working with really impacted us, canceling a day with one of our tours with one of our NASCAR clients because the group that we were using already went to the ELDs. And so kind of got a firsthand look at it this past year. So it will be interesting to see. And I do like your point on, one, the ability to execute could be impacted on the number of shows or different markets, timing lining up with big events, and key business driving opportunities. It'll be interesting to see. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Jonell, so what impact do you think it will have on like a lot of these big tours that are like mini cities, like wrestling, the tennis tours, the Mountain Dew tours, the X Games? I mean, they really have to get out in front of it and prepare to avoid disaster, right?
Yeah, something like that. Probably more so wrestling as opposed to the X Games. So wrestling, they have so many different promotions going on, and they book them so many nights in a row. I think it's just going to be a situation to where you have to staff up, and as opposed to one truck being able to handle the entire load, you're going to have to leapfrog. And I guess by leapfrog, saying that instead of one truck handling the drive from A to B, then B to C, you have to have two trucks going from A. One goes to B, one goes to C, and then B goes to D, C goes to E, and so on and so forth, just so you can manage the times better. Because not only can they see how often you've been on the road and how often you've been driving, they can also monitor your speed. So when they're evaluating these logbooks, they can see if you drove 77 miles an hour, straight through on a 60-mile-an-hour road for an extended period of time, and you can retroactively be ticketed for something like that. So I think more so, especially wrestling with their aggressive schedule, these types of events, I don't think they're going to cut anything back. I just think that from a budget standpoint, you have to staff up, and I'm sure they're doing some of that already. But that it's just, I think it's really going to affect a lot of the smaller agencies that don't even deal with DOTs to begin with. And so having to jump into this and learn this new system where there is no give is really going to affect a lot of programs. And I feel for that person that gets parked and has to go to their client and say, we can't make a show, or we can't make this event, or we can't go to this expo because our truck is stuck in Kansas because he drove or she drove 15 hours and they could only go on 14, or they didn't take their break after their 8 hours of driving. So that's something to keep an eye on.
What else is on your radar?
As I mentioned before, the integration of AR and VR into setups. VR is something that is very interesting, very cool, and also very expensive. Seeing more and more companies integrated, not seeing as many integrated from a standpoint that would immediately affect sales. I think that augmented reality is probably something that you can integrate into your area or into your program a little bit easier that will affect sales. And I guess the best example right now as far as a commercial with augmented reality are the Star Wars stickers that they're showing on the Google Pixel commercials, using those types of things. When you look at things like fashion, when you look at things like automotives, vehicles, things like that, being able to integrate that in a fun way, an interesting way, would be helpful. Also, another trend is leveraging live social video at your events, whether that's through Facebook Live, Instagram Live, Snapchat, different things like that, making it conducive to the consumers to do these types of interactions, share them, and expand your brand's presence, which is something that we're always looking to do for our clients.
Valerie, what's your take on VR and the use and experiences? What are you hearing?
I think that for 2018, I would think that brands will expand in terms of augmented reality. A lot of people are familiar with Pokemon Go and how you could chase Pokemon, these like digital characters, and it looks like they're in your backyard or in your front lawn or at locations. It was interesting. Starbucks was one of the first players to find value in that. Like, hey, we're going to have this stop here. We're going to drive coffee sales, and they actually measured it, and they're like all in on augmented reality. What I'm seeing now in 2018 is all the new stadiums are prepared for augmented reality for a better fan experience. So by using the app or and through push messaging techniques through the app, stop by here, use your phone, take a picture. And it's also, stadiums aren't doing that just because it's fun from a consumer experience. They're also doing it because brands have higher expectations of engagement with their brands along the concourse and when they're at the game. And so it's all measurable. So I think it'll be interesting. I think the baby step will be augmented before brands go full-blown virtual reality.
Well, Valerie, what else is on your radar for 2018?
I have a couple of things. Mine are a couple of quick hits. So I am really excited about seeing social media continue to challenge the traditional TV model. It's a big year, and Snapchat now has a television deal with NBC Universal, so they're going to have a lot of full length programming now on their platform, and I think more and more brands, filmmakers, sports entities and leagues are trying to figure out where consumers want to consume their product. I know we've talked previously and had conversations with clients about ratings, and we know the NFL ratings are down. The traditional model ratings are down, but the streaming rates have never been higher. So I think the way people consume it's just there's so many different platforms. It's like overwhelming. Like, I just want to watch the game. Where do I find it? I think that competition is only going to get more intense, and I think there's going to be an opportunity for maybe like a top 5 players to come out of that and change the way we consume sports and entertainment. Another thing
Valerie.
I'm looking forward to, what I think is interesting, is we talk
Valerie.
about
Valerie,
Hey, sorry.
I got a question for you on that.
Yeah.
With the Snapchat and the videos, ESPN has started doing sports centers on Snapchat, and is this I don't know the best way to say it, but is this a viable way to get those consumers, that demographic, to then begin to go to ESPN when they're not on Snapchat? Or is this just trying to go to where they are to give them what you have in whatever form possible? Because I it's hard for me to see how that translates to bringing them under the tent, so to speak.
The average 18 to 55-year-old spends anywhere from 20 to 24 minutes an hour on a social media network. So if that's checking in or Snapchatting or on Facebook, there are, the younger demographic, like the millennials and the 20-year-olds, like they're not watching traditional news or television. They're getting their news from Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. So they're following newsmakers, whatever it is, NBC, CNN, Fox, whatever your news is. They're following ESPN, to your point. They're following them on Instagram. And so now these networks are being challenged to create replicable programming for those platforms. And it's not like if you watch ESPN on television, it's the exact same thing on Snapchat, because they have to build that programmatically for that channel, for that consumer. So I think we're only going to see an increase in that. It's interesting. Even brands that I personally engage with, like I'm like, hey, what are their specials today? And they're not anywhere. They're not on their website. I have to go to their Instagram and their story of the day to figure out like what they're selling today. So I think that's only I think it's just going to continue. And I think it's a challenge for leagues, sports properties to figure out what's the rights model look like, and where they get the most consumption. And the problem is that with all these new channels, that you're broadcasting on, like all the award shows now have red carpet shows on Twitter and Facebook, and they have these great experiences around them. Brands are holding traditional media way more accountable because the measurement is not in place like it is on the digital side. Like, exactly the volume and the engagement and where people went afterwards, how many times the ad was shown on the computer, what people engage with, and you don't have that accountability in traditional TV. So I think that this model of traditional TV and sports watching and streaming is it's really going to start to change. I think towards the end of 2018, I think people are going to be preparing for 2019 and beyond.
Very cool. What else you got?
I also, so So what I think is interesting is we talk about artificial intelligence and VR and all these different things and chatbots. And like the other day, my Alexa started talking to me out of nowhere, giving me advice that I didn't ask for. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't ask for that. Like, this is a little creepy. But what I think is really interesting is that I was reading an article in Forbes, and it talked about this may be the year of AI, actual intelligence. And so it's not artificial intelligence. I think with all this technology and everyone's been busy to get out in front and on those platforms, like we actually have real data to tell how fans, consumers are engaging with brands and properties and television shows and programming. And so I think this year is a real year where marketers are going to be held to task in terms of that accountability and measurement, and then be able to take that data and put it into real objectives, goals, and tactics that will drive business performance. So I think of all the technology, there's also a step back this year. Like, that's great. We're up. We're doing all these things. Now, how do we make it actually measurable and actionable? And so I think 2018 is the year of that.
Interesting.
And my last one is about influencers. So I know there's always talk about influencers, and brands hire bloggers or work with bloggers and teams and properties, to create a bigger megaphone for social media. An interesting trend too, in the same article I read, and it's actually, we were talking to a client about it this week, is that some of your biggest influencers will be your employees. So if you think about all of your employees and how much they engage, if they're part of that group that engages 24 minutes an hour on social media, I think brands have forgotten, companies, teams have forgotten that their employees also have a megaphone and maybe the most passionate or the most disengaged. So how do you keep them engaged to also be brand ambassadors? So I know it's not the traditional model, like everyone's using influencers, so I think that will continue to grow. I know a dog that makes $1 million a year now. They're making $20 for every 1,000 followers. But I think when we go back to this idea of real intelligence, actual intelligence, I think people are going to look inward to their companies to also be those brand ambassadors.
It was great when we did have a discussion with the client on that this week, and appreciated you taking them there in the discussion. And they really resonated well with them, the opportunities they were missing.
Well, I think sometimes companies think it's an ego, like we shouldn't talk about it or we don't want to be boastful. And I think that it depends how you tactically execute it. You're not being boastful. If you're a company that's proud and your employees are proud, shout it from the rooftops. And so I think for brands that are uncomfortable doing that, I think this will be a year of change and eye-opening and testing. Again, you want to put guardrails in place, and so we work with clients to make sure that you engage properly. I mean, there's also horror stories of, companies going online and a CMO in the middle of the night tweeting something and, and impacting business sales the next day. But I think really people that for a long time employees have been ignored. And I think this is the year that stops.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if it's widespread or if it's just with market share sports clients that actually see a benefit in doing that this year. It'd be
well, Forbes called it out, saying this was the year of the employee brand influencer. So,
nice.
Something I hadn't, I knew it's always a best practice, and we always tell our clients, like, some of your biggest advocates, even though they don't have the biggest megaphones, they have the most passionate and the most knowledgeable facts and sharing. So I think it'll be interesting to see that actually go to practice. And along those same lines, I think too, we work with, athletes and teams and drivers and NASCAR. I think this is also the year that drivers, athletes really start to focus more on how do they build their social media audiences and engage with fans and people who are passionate about them and what they're doing, whatever sport it is, how they actually build themselves as a brand, a sponsorable brand that other companies want to pay them to engage their audiences for. I think there's always been hey, let's build a huge audience and we'll send tweets and it'll be great. But I think this year, actually, athletes, whether it's a quarterback or a NASCAR driver, I think taking that personal responsibility and that pride to build social media accounts and create content on their own, thoughtful content, on their own or with the help of an agency to actually help build their own brand and obviously generate revenue and income in different ways.
Well, that's a good transition for me, because I'll tell you a couple of things that I'm watching this year. The first is I'm excited about NASCAR, and I'm excited about some of the stuff, exactly what you're alluding to. And I know excited about NASCAR is not coming out of a whole lot of folks' mouths except NASCAR teams and drivers and such. It's like every other sport, there's scrutiny on ratings and ticket sales. And we got a lot of drivers who have retired or who have been moved out of their seat. And so there's a big youth movement coming in. And it's that youth movement that I'm most excited about. And I'm excited about it because I think that these group of young drivers can take this sport in a different direction. First of all, I think you're going to see them driving with every lap with their tongue hanging out, trying to make a name for themselves, which I think is going to make the product on the track more exciting. But even today, and we're taping this on January the 11th, Ryan Blaney and Texas Motor Speedway had a test yesterday. And Blaney over lunch went out and had lunch with the fans who had come to the track. And I'm sure Texas Motor Speedway put it out. But what a great gesture for those fans who are so passionate, they're just coming to watch the teams test. I mean, there's no competition. They're just watching guys make laps in unmarked cars, a lot of them. So they're out there, and he took the time to go out and to spend time with these fans, had some pizza with them, and a great experience, and it's online. I think Blaney is one to watch in this space. He's done a good job social media wise, but you got other young drivers like Chase Elliott, Eric Jones, Bubba Wallace, William Byron, Alex Bowman. Some of these guys, well, they pick up the ball and build their fan base differently than maybe the drivers of old have done it. So it'll be interesting to watch that. The second thing I'm interested to see this year is watching retailers, because of the amount of time we spend in the retail space, watching retailers try to figure out how to, or if, it's not really a matter of if, you got to somehow, but how are they going to compete with Amazon? And so many, we think immediately you would go right after the all of the stuff that you see in a store, the order online with the pickup at store. Now we have home delivery. Now we have some different technologies making their way into the aisles to make your help you be able to buy groceries easier, faster, while spending less time in the store and taking less time in your calendar. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch. It may take another 2 or 3 years before we see what the impact of this is. But is this really what millennials want? Is it, or is there an element of going to the grocery store, for example, that is an experience? Do you think of college students we deal with? We talk often about students. It's like, yes, they want to shop online. And Valerie, you've even posted some stuff out here recently on how are people using technology to shop online, but it is, do we always want to buy online? How fast can we get comfortable with buying produce, for example? And I know there's been some success stories in that, and I know Amazon is changing everything, but it will be interesting to see what really does happen to the in-store experience and the at-store experience, and what happens in that retail space.
And I think you're seeing some of that too with the Scan and Go. I know Sam's Club, they've been advertising that for over a year, and Kroger's starting to integrate that in some of their stores with the Scan and Go technology, seeing that become more prevalent. I've heard some interesting discussions around that and loss prevention and just different things like that and ways around it. But I think that's more so that Amazon impact.
Yep. Fowler?
And two things there too. I don't know that it's Amazon or a retailer. Like, it could be both. There are a lot of people testing and brands testing this year. There's several clients. They sell themselves, but Amazon has a better presence in search and indexing and the way they can deliver product. And so while there's a different revenue model there, I think there's maybe it's an and model and not an or. And then just from personal experience, I have not done like a full grocery shopping trip in 2 months. I order it online. If there's any discrepancies, I get a phone call to swap things out. I pull into a queue of 12 cars, and within 5 minutes, my groceries are completely loaded in my car. It's already been paid for. There was no extra fee for the experience, and all I have to do is take them out of my car and put them into my house.
Mm-hmm. So the challenge
I think there's something convenience.
Yeah, and so the question I have for you and the challenge for the brands. So my thinking is, if you are putting ad blockers on your technology, so you're listening to more podcasts, you're recording shows, and you're speeding through the commercials, you're not paying attention there, you're consuming more stuff on Netflix, Hulu, and other channels, and you're doing your best to avoid advertising, then you're ordering all your groceries online. At what point do you get bored with, I didn't know they had 27 new flavors of chips?
Or Oreos.
Or Oreos, yes. Or what? You mean they have sriracha flavored Coke now? I didn't know that. It's like, at what point, how are you going to be able to branch out and to see what else is out there in the marketplace? And I think at some point, could there be maybe boredom with my shopping list, and how do I expand that? So I got to get more creative on how I engage the consumer differently.
It puts a challenge on the grocer and the brands.
Yeah.
So when I'm on that website, like I picked an item and they're like, oh, have you also thought about this?
Yeah.
And I have an ad blocker, so I don't see pop-up ads. But to be able to shop eventually, I'm sure they're going to make you take them off pop-up blocker, because brands will start demanding that ad space. But I also think that means that more CPG brands are going to have to be more on platforms instead of their traditional, like you said, Oreo or M&M TV commercial. They're going to have to integrate more into social media and actually serve their new product offering on different platforms, social media, digital, ad retargeting, to create awareness if it's not happening in the store. I mean, the store experience is never going to fully go away.
Right.
People want to go and sample, and even with Amazon purchasing Whole Foods, people still like to go to Whole Foods. There's specialty items, the things you don't know you want. But it's great to have that option in a world where everyone, like, the one thing we don't have is time. And so I think it should be a challenge for brands to make sure they're getting that messaging out there, again, like we said earlier, on platforms where people are actually shopping and seeking information.
Well, and I think that and giving experiences, right? I
Yeah.
think you've seen a rise in experiential marketing because of that. Through technology, somewhat we've reduced our number of experiences that we're having. We don't get the experience of running into people every day because I went to the grocery store and ran into somebody. Those discussions happen fewer, I think, these days than they did before. So brands who are saying, hey, we have to go create and engage in a different way, I think have a good chance of winning as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like those occasions, like brands have to be more intentional on how they, on when and how often they communicate that message to consumers, and have to be smarter about other ways, partnerships, whether that be through sports or different avenues, sports and entertainment, who they partner with and how they partner with them. Because as much as, they'll tune out the ad blockers, if you're partnered with their favorite artist, they're going to listen to them. Yeah. They're not tuning that guy out or that woman out. They're not going to fast forward through, them coming up on the screen or coming up on their computer or what have you. So I think that's, where brands have to, as Valerie mentioned earlier, brands asking more of traditional media from a data standpoint, metric standpoint, like now that conversation has been having and will continue to be had with partnerships and their agencies through being smarter and more efficient in those partnerships.
And I challenge our listeners too, and all of us and brand marketers out there, watch the Super Bowl this year. And when you see those traditional, because that's an event, you all come together no matter what platform you're watching it on. But when you see those commercials on traditional television, they're still driving you to an online experience, oftentimes either with the hashtag or watch the rest of this commercial online. Any contesting leading up to social media is digital. So you'll see brands, they're testing the waters and trying to figure out that conversion, so they're hitting every touch point. And so I don't think a traditional model will go away. I think the balance is going to shift to serve people where they want to be, where they're engaging.
And, I'm glad you brought that up, because how devalued are Super Bowl commercials now? And I only ask that because last year, and I think a little bit more the year before that, but last year, I think they said somewhere like 76% of the commercials that were on the Super Bowl were available the day before or 2 days before, through different ads or YouTube feeds or what have you. So if I'm able to see these ads well in advance of the Super Bowl, why am I paying the $3 million, $3.5 million to be on the Super? Obviously, everyone's not watching it, but a couple of these ads started trending and people knew about them before they saw them. And there was an ad I saw. I told my wife about it. I said, "Oh yeah, this is the ad I was talking about that I saw yesterday." She's like, "What's the purpose of me watching the Super Bowl if you just saw it yesterday?" So I think the
surprise and delight of the Super Bowl ad is over.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a cachet with there's only so many spots, and if you want the whole world to see, you better buy a spot in the Super Bowl. I don't think that's the case anymore. I mean, even if you think about, I read a case study recently about Doritos. You know that ad where the dog is standing on another dog?
Yes.
He sneaks in and he buys the chips and they're like, "Sir." So that commercial was released
how'd they do
as part
that
of a
again?
contest. No, I should not have done that in the first place. But you know what I'm talking about, though. But it was interesting because they had that contest online. Again, it's now with all these different platforms, many more people are considering themselves directors or content creators, and you don't have to have a big camera like back in the day. So there was hype around it, and then they teased the commercial. You could see it online, and then I saw it during the Super Bowl, and it was fun to see it in my traditional environment with my friends and all of our snacks. But the element of surprise is gone. It used to be I would, if I had to get a snack or use the restroom, I would pop out during the game. But now you can kind of miss the commercials because you're like, "Oh yeah, I already saw that commercial." So I think brands, again, to my point earlier about measurement and being smart and using real intelligence, are going to start to look and challenge that model. "Oh, you want 30 million for a commercial? I can reach just as many people on YouTube with a paid boost. Mm-hmm. Or a partnership with YouTube." So I think, again, that'll be part of the traditional models that we see challenged. I think there's always going to be a fun cachet to it. People love the commercials. But it's not the same. I don't think that revenue will continue to hold water.
And there's still a lot of people watching it.
Yeah. 111 million. You can't sneeze at that.
Right. I think I think college football, they said college football 30 seconds during the championship were about 1.3, and you have 30 million at the peak.
Yeah.
Watching, so three times as many.
And that's on cable.
We placed some buys sometime, and this year, the big game, the start of college football season, we were working on a project, and I was talking to a client about a buy, and they said, "Well, I want to get in I guess it was the Alabama-Florida game or Florida State game."
Florida State?
Florida State, yeah, sorry. I knew you correct me, so I studied. But and so they wanted to get regionally to impact their business, and it was "Oh, better buy the commercial now. It's going to be sold out." And so the client we convinced them to pay a premium price, and then they were selling additional spots the day before for less. So I paid more to guarantee that our client would be in this program, but the reality was the demand wasn't what they thought. So I think, it should be a conversation, and it's good for agencies like us to be on top of it and challenge, some of the opportunities that were presented, whether it's on the sponsorship side, a media placement, or a digital buy, and traditional buys, to make sure that, is this true, or are they trying to get us to buy into the hype?
Yeah. Well, listen, with that, we will wrap this roundtable up, and appreciate the time, guys. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Jonell. We're excited about where our podcast is going. We're excited about things that are going on at market share, and it'll be interesting to check in at the end of the year on these trends in mid-year as well, and kind of see where we are. Thanks for joining us.
Follow us on social media, MKT Share Sports on Twitter, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
See you then. Thanks again.
Bye.
This has been the Market Share Sports Podcast, dedicated to helping brands maximize their sponsorships and create more engaging experiences. Visit us at marketsharesports.com to learn more about our work, catch up on past episodes, and sign up for our newsletter. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Thanks again for joining us.